Hello everyone, this is Donovan from Gundam Model Builders, and I'm here today to give a tutorial, sort of my way of doing a LED conversion. Now, some of you have seen my picture, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up my leg I have already completed, and then I'll go through step by step on what I have done to the left leg. So here you can see that the leg has lit up. Come on. I will give some warnings about wiring and all that stuff later on. That way, you guys know what to expect as we move along. Okay, you can see here there are three LEDs in this, and I will explain how I got light to this side, and so on and so forth. Okay, now, LEDs are fairly simple once you start to get the hang of them, but they can be a bit annoying, especially when it comes to the real grades and their absolute minuscule size compared to something like a master grade or a perfect grade. So the unicorns always look good because in the show they light up, and even when they're not lit up, they still hold a shelf presence. But I always like a little bit of LED tossed in just to give it a bit of I don't know, flair. So what I have done here is you'll see that I have one wire just sort of sticking out at the base here. This is my positive lead. When I go to build out the base that I'm going to be putting this on, I will be connecting this either directly to a peg or to a power source with a longer wire that I will then plug into the wall using a power buck. And that's because I have done a couple other methods, both coming out the back, one going through an action base and one not so much. And they didn't turn out as much as I wanted to hide the wiring. And one thing you'll notice here that in except a very few places, mainly right here and right here, I have completely hidden the wires inside of the Banshee. So here is the leg I am currently working on. Of course, this is the left leg. Let me get my hand out of the way. And I've already planted two LEDs because watching glue dry is not as much fun, I don't think, to anybody. So the first part here is with the destroy modes. I'm not sure what to call these. I know this is the psycho frame, but this would be where the kneecap is. I have already placed an LED in right here. And what I did is I just took a little bit of super glue, and because this area is so finicky to hold it in, I did take a little bit of baking powder, which helps bond that super glue that much faster. And I ran the wires up and down around where the vernier will go and up through here where the actual joint is. Now you'll see that there is a hole up here at the hip joint. I did that with my pin vise. This is a cheap one from Amazon, but it has been my best friend with LED work. And I put an LED in here because when you do go to build the psycho frame out on the leg, or on the upper leg, you have this piece, which connects on this side of the upper leg. Or right there at the hip joint. So when you do put it on, no light can get through. So I drilled the hole to give it light. Of course, this is the piece that goes on the other side. From there, I have run the wiring down here through the hip joint, which we'll go ahead and see how that works. I have not actually test fitted this, but from my other leg, this should actually fit just fine. Might take a little extra squeezing, but it should be fine. If you've noticed, so before I click this into place, if you've noticed, I ran the wires around the pegs where they should not interfere connection. Okay. And apart from a tiny gap right there, you can see that the joint is now fully connected. I will give this warning, when you do go to build out like this, you do lose the option of going from destroy mode. And that's because of this right here. This spot, I mean, you could try and press it down, but it doesn't go down completely, so you'd still have some of the psycho frame exposed. Okay, so now comes this part. Now you'll see I have wires right here. And nobody wants to see those ugly little wires. So you take this, make sure that your long wire, and I'll explain why some of my wires are so long in just a minute, and you just slip them through. And there we go. Okay. And my wires are so long, especially this one here. This is my negative lead. That's because I still need to connect this negative lead through the rest of the body, which this one will help with that, to be able to make sure that the one I have right here will exit my foot. Okay, let me go ahead and take this part, and we connect it. Okay. And there will be small gapping, which you can close off with whatever you may feel like. Some people use glue. I just don't care that much about that gapping because it's really not noticeable once you get down to it. Once you've actually built this and put it on display. Okay, and now we have the rest of the upper leg built. Of course, we are still missing the part that will open it up to destroy mode, but since that's not necessary at this moment. Okay, a warning about your LEDs. Most of my LEDs are 3.3 volt, give or take. Sometimes 2.9, some are 3.4. Do not use 6 volts or anything above what your actual voltage recommendation is because you'll risk burning out the LEDs. Over voltage is the enemy to LEDs. And there we go again. Like I said, with wiring, a lot of it comes down to finicky issues when you're doing tests like this. Okay. Now, the next part is where we will connect in the foot joint. And I'll explain what I did here with the foot joint in just a second. Okay. Make sure I got this on right. I have not been building models long enough to know all of these steps by heart. There we go. So bear with me for just a second while I get these snapped into place. And like I said, I've already built these out to destroy mode, which is, you know, it makes it easier in the long run. The first leg I did not, and I ended up breaking a wire. And let me tell you, the worst thing you can do is break a wire in a small place because it is a pain to get them out. It is a pain to rewire and solder it all. Now, I also do recommend soldering. When I get done with this video, I will be going back through and soldering up these twisted wires because it does make them slightly stronger. Okay, now here's that cavity where the destroy mode leg part would go. Now, here is the joint, the psycho frame that goes into the foot. Okay, as you can see, I already have wires running out of it. This is just loosely in here. It's not actually glued in, and there's a reason for that. And that's because when I do go to do the foot, there's a joint connection that we need to use. Now, also be very careful with this. On my right leg, while I was doing some snap fitting, I did break one of these parts off, which, of course, is never fun when you break a part. So let's just get that right there. And where aren't you going? One of the things about LEDs you're gonna have to learn is just roll with the punches when it comes to getting parts into place. It can be a bit of a pain to get everything wired into place at the right time, at the right placement. Not difficult once you figure it out and you're not doing it behind a camera. But there we go. Okay, so you'll see that the LED is just sort of hanging out in there. What I do recommend is taking your tweezers and pulling it along to the back. And if you can, pull some of that excess wire to line it up completely. I think I need to pull that back end up a little bit and pull some of that wire in. And that's because I have already done a slight trimming onto the jointing method for this. Okay, so here is the foot joint. Now, you can see that I've actually trimmed out a little bit, and that's because the wires do block some of the movement or some of the placement to put this in. So all you got to do is trim off a little bit off the back, squeeze, and I think we are in place. Yeah, it looks like we are in place. And we have our foot. Now, I don't have these connected up yet, but what I'm doing here is I will be connecting this negative lead into this negative lead, and then running them down through the back here. Oh, I'm out of focus. Running them down through the back here, and that will eventually move down towards these parts right here, coming out the bottom of the foot, as I have done here. Okay, so I have ran this negative lead out through these parts right here into the foot where it has come out and where it sits. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comments. I will try and do a better video or a video each time I move on. Of course, now I have to break this down to get the last pieces of the wiring done and soldered together. But once you start finding a path for your wires, it's really not all that hard to get them in. I bought my LEDs from Amazon. These are just micro LEDs. They come in blue, red, white, yellow, green. Yeah, that's all the colors. And it's a big pack for like 10, 15 bucks. It also comes with resistors if you want to try and use resistors. But I don't. I use the Power Bucks. They're slightly more expensive, but they have a cool little LED screen that works really well. The list of tools that I have used for this include my Citadel nippers, a set of, or specifically this style of tweezer, and my file. I know a lot of people use their hobby knives to cut the coating off of their wiring. I don't. I used to, but ever since I decided to file a wire one day because I was bored, I have found that using a fine file is better than using the hobby knife. It's slightly faster, and you don't have to waste a blade. These are easily cleaned by a simple makeup brush. This was recommended to me by a friend of mine, I Snap Plastic. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram and TikTok, but if you don't, you should. Okay? But just give this a quick brushing, and your teeth are basically clean and ready for use again. Alright, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave in the comments. I will be posting a picture of the two legs together later, and when I do move on to later parts of the body, including the hips and chest, I will have a picture for, or I'll have a video for that later.